Welcome to the Soul Archaeology podcast, a space for connection, resonance, witnessing, and learning. Together we'll harvest medicine from the spiral of life, sharing conversations with other embodied humans who have navigated their own initiations and found alignment with their true soul essence. With weekly astrology, energy updates, embodied conversation, and channeled teachings, this is a space for you to land and find resonance with the spiral of your own soul. Hello, and welcome back to Soul Archaeology. Wow. How is everyone feeling after the intensity of last week? I was hearing from so many different people that they were having these intense energetic experiences internally, anger, frustration, things really coming to a boiling point. And to begin the week with a full moon in Scorpio, and to end the week with a Uranus Cazimi, Mercury squaring Mars, that's a lot of intensity. And we've been doing so much of this clearing work, so much of this excavation, bringing things to the surface so they can be witnessed, integrated, met in a new way. And in a lot of ways, this year has been building to this point as we move officially out of that shadow period, officially out of the eclipse window, officially out of the slow emergence of Mars. And we move into this parade of the outer planets shifting into new signs. It started with Neptune in March, moving into Aries. And this week, we have the long-awaited shift of Saturn into Aries on May 24th. And then, of course, we have Jupiter shifting into Cancer in June, Uranus shifting into Gemini in July, and then things slow down as we begin the retrograde season at the end of the summer and into fall and winter. And then next year, early next year in the spring, things really begin to click in. So we get these waves. And as we know, part of this lived experience of living on this organic, rich, nutrient-dense, fruitful earth is that we move, grow, and expand through contractions and expansions. We ebb and flow and move in a non-linear way. And now we're moving into a period of rapid expansion. And expansion doesn't always happen with ease. Sometimes it's a bit pushy. Sometimes it forces us to look at the spaces and places and corners within our psyche, our subconscious, our shadow that we're afraid to look at. It pushes us to act, to change, to evolve in some ways. Things can get really uncomfortable in an expansion period. And I have a feeling that's what some of you are sort of feeling right now, are the growing pains. I know I am personally. And I'm gently, not so gently reminded that when you're moving into an upgrade, an up-leveling period, when you're asking for something to change or shift in a way that is positive and aligned with your growth, it will require your full participation in really looking at the spaces where you play into the patterns that are keeping you where you currently are. Because we always participate in our current reality. We're always, in some way, shape, or form, participating. I heard something recently, and forgive me because I can't remember where it came from for the life of me, but it's a concept that has been, shared in so many different ways, so many different cultures and traditions and languages. But our thoughts are not shaping our reality. Our thoughts are our reality. So when we think about it in that way, it really hands us the keys to shift our reality it also puts a lot of responsibility on our shoulders to shift and change what isn't working in our lives. And I can already feel Saturn doing its work. This shift of Saturn into Aries, this ownership, full ownership over the circumstances of our lives. And I spoke a little bit about this last week, but I am in this sort of crunchy, uncomfortable period. It almost feels a little bit like the pause, the quietness before the storm, where I feel this expansion wanting to take shape within my life, this freedom, liberation, taking off, maturation, and elevation. And it's really sort of testing me right now because things are so quiet. And what I'm posting isn't really getting seen. It's not gaining traction. Even some of the podcast listens are a little down. And it's just really intriguing because I, before, would have totally spiraled, and sort of got caught in this loop of fear, really. Fearing that it was all going away, that it was slipping through my fingers, that the rug was being pulled out from beneath me. But through this work, through time, space, maturation, I've learned that this is a gift, that this time, this quietness, this space to stay present with my truth, my authenticity, my medicine, my purpose, my faith is the key. And this quiet space is where everything begins to take shape and form. And I've walked enough women through their own initiations to know that when you land in that space where everything's quiet and you feel like all the lights have been turned off, and things are very uncertain, your intuition sharpens. Things come into focus in a new way, and your faith deepens. Your anchor roots in a deeper layer of you. And so if anyone else is feeling this right now, know you aren't alone, and that this is a very, very magical stage within the process where we get to believe in not only ourselves, but also our support from Source, the other co-creator. So after that extremely pushy week, I felt like it was a Mercury retrograde. I felt like I was kind of being tested and squeezed in all the ways, and so much was surfacing and coming up, but it was also so magical. Like I can sense and feel and touch what's unseen. And the other timeline, the timeline that is opposite the fear, the old loops, the patterns, the heavily trodden paths that I have gone down so many different times. And even though I still fell into those patterns a little bit, I always knew there was another option, which is so important when we are in a default response, depending on how deep, how intense the response is within our nervous system, within our psyche. We oftentimes cannot access the safe space within us and that higher self, that higher aspect of ourselves. But the more healing, the more integration that you do, the more intimacy you create with these different parts that are getting activated, the more space you have to see and witness what your actual truth is, the more access you have to that higher timeline, that new pathway. And it just takes practice. It takes practice. It takes awareness. It takes skills, tools, and resources. But we always have that choice. So the more you develop these skills, the more available that new pathway and that new choice becomes. So this week is a big week, but it's a little bit different. We have some trines and sextiles that will just feel more supportive. And when I say more supportive, it doesn't mean that the energy of last week wasn't supportive, but it was really pushy. The squares can really be pushy, gritty, intense, conflict, especially when Pluto and Mars are involved. And this week we're moving into Gemini season. So things are getting fast. They're getting mobile. We're moving from fixed Earth, the slowness, the presence of Taurus, to mutable air, fast free, quick. So on May 20th, we enter Gemini season. And then on the 22nd, we have Venus in Aries trine Mars in Leo. And this is going to be an opportune time to connect with your passion, to connect with your partner, to connect with what truly drives you, what lights you up, what excites you, things that you want to change within your relational framework, things that you want to change within your value system, conversations that maybe want to be had. Things might feel more urgent this week. We have that beautiful, supportive trine in fire. And trines are supportive, harmonious aspects. It means two planets are in the same element, communicating in a way that is understood, that is supportive, that is harmonious. So they're sort of working together. That's a good way to put it. Venus and Mars, masculine, feminine, relationships, values, money, drive, will, passion, desire. With both of those personal planets in fire, things are going to heat up and in a more harmonious way this week. Moving out of those squares of last week, this invites some repair, perhaps. Repair to some relationships that might have ruptured last week, some conversations that were challenging. This could be really supportive, as trines tend to be, to really discern what feels good, what feels in alignment, what feels true and real for you right now, and to create maybe perhaps an internal repair. If things didn't go as planned last week, how can you be with the pivot, the reroute, the medicine that arose from the conflict or the challenge or the rupture? And then on the 24th, we have the Sun trine Pluto. Pluto's retrograde right now, so this will give us an opportunity to see perhaps our challenges, our shadow, our fears in a new light. Pluto was squared last week by Mercury. This week, it's forming a trine with the Sun. So maybe you felt stuck last week. This week could provide a new outcome, a new pathway, new choices. If you allow yourself to remain open to the new pathway, it has no choice but to reveal itself to you. That same day on the 24th, which is a pretty big day this week, we have obviously the Sun trine Pluto, like I just mentioned, and Mercury's also conjunct Uranus, and Saturn enters Aries, which will be a bulk of this episode because it's a significant event. It means a lot for all of us, collectively, individually, especially for those of you who are listening who have Saturn in Aries natally, and those of you that have Saturn in Pisces because you're moving out of your Saturn return. So the same day Saturn enters Aries, we have Mercury conjunct Uranus as well. And it's a good time to sit with, what did the Sun and Uranus conjunction reveal to you this last week? What revelations came forward? Realizations, surprises. Maybe it's something you've always known, but you were able to access a new perspective, a new way of seeing it and experiencing it. These conjunctions are trying to help us liberate ourselves from something that feels rigid or stuck or stagnant within our lives, where we're leaning too far into safety and familiarity. And then, of course, we have Saturn's shift into Aries. And I've talked a lot about this throughout the year because it's highly significant. Number one, Saturn is leaving the 12th sign of the zodiac, and it's beginning a whole new cycle through the zodiac. It's stepping into that creation point, the 0 point of Aries. And I've talked about how both Neptune and Saturn are meeting together there next year. By the way, I have paused this at different points throughout this recording, and it's always been 2222, 1111. I just stopped at 4444. So if those are your numbers, that message is for you. But the 0 point of Aries is such a significant point this year. We've had activations at this point since the beginning of this year. and we will continue to into 2026. And I cannot overemphasize the importance of this point over the next few years, what it means for us collectively and individually. And it's really a fresh new beginning, a reset point, the point of creation, the point where we begin again, a rebirth point. And this is happening wherever you have 0 degrees of Aries in your chart. Depending on the system that you use, I use Placidus, so I can't give each and every one of you guidance on where this lands in your chart. But you'll want to look at the house where Aries is and look at the 0 point of Aries. So 0 degrees of Aries. And wherever this is, you are fully and completely stepping into your power. You are taking the reins of your life fully and completely. This is the I am point. This is the point where you self-actualize. And Saturn takes about 30-ish years to move through the zodiac, 29 and a half. On May 24th, it enters Aries for the first time in about 29 and a half years. This is initiating a new cycle of personal responsibility, initiation, self-leadership. We're moving from the watery depths of Pisces into the fiery forge of Aries. This is about self-actualization, clarification, action, change. Saturn is the planet of maturation, mastery, devotion, structure, boundaries, authority, rules, restriction, structure. Aries is the emergence of self. It's the soul's instinct to become, the I am point, to separate from the past and forge something new. And Saturn's entrance here says, yes, let's begin, let's initiate, but let's begin in right relationship with your power, your body, your boundaries, your truth. Let's begin in integrity, embodied, responsible, grounded, and clear. This is about sacred initiation, movement, new beginnings. This is an up-leveling on wherever you have Aries in your chart. This transit begins on May 24th, 2025, and goes until Saturn retrogrades back into Pisces on September 1st. It will be retrograde in Pisces until February 13th when it enters Aries again until 2028. So Saturn is in Aries from May 24th, 2025 to September 1st, 2025. And then again, February 13th, 2026 through April 12th, 2028. So if you're entering your Saturn return, if your natal Saturn is in Aries, you'll want to note those dates. If you want to know your exact Saturn return date, you can book a session with me. I'm happy to walk through that with you. I love doing Saturn return readings for clients because I've had to befriend Saturn in this lifetime, and it's a journey. But it's funny because Saturn is a malefic planet, so it kind of gets this reputation as a punisher, a disciplinarian. It can feel rather oppressive and rigid and harsh and even severe, maybe even unforgiving. But Saturn is not here to punish, but to help us grow through lived experience. It's here to reveal where we have opportunity to mature, to grow and evolve through pressure and hardship and challenge. Saturn represents maturation, mastery, devotion, structure, boundaries, mastery on the material plane, authority, rules, restriction. It reveals where we develop inner authority, not through ease, but through effort, discomfort, challenge, trial and error. It reveals our karmic contracts, the train that really holds info on what we came here to learn, mature, and grow through. It shows us where we have these protective mechanisms that protect the ego, where we have a shield or a wall, or where we need a boundary. Saturn is lead. It's dense, it's heavy, it's tangible, it's weighted. It reminds us that we are in physical form, that we have a body, that we have responsibility, that working through what's difficult can shape and form and ripen us in ways that are profound. Saturn asks for self-responsibility, discipline. It's reparenting. It's looking at where we fall into our inner child without knowing it, where we fall into victim consciousness, where we create these protective loops within our subconscious that tell us that we can't do something or that life is happening to us simply because the opposite or the alternative is to face our own relationship with what's safe and familiar, even if it's uncomfortable. Saturn forces us to reflect in the most harsh, honest ways. We have to look at our own shit, for lack of better words. We have to quite literally see ourselves reflected in another or in an experience that might be incredibly uncomfortable and confronting. Saturn is confronting. That's a great way to put it. It does not let us hide. It does not let us dissociate. That's why this Saturn in Pisces transit was so fascinating, because it was so sobering. It revealed all the ways that we self-abandon, that we dissociate, that we escape, that we create these stories and narratives that we can't do something, or that life is happening to us, or that things just are the way they are. And it forced us to really find our power. As Saturn moves into Aries, it's going to be forged by fire. Or I should say, we will be forged by fire. We can no longer escape. We can no longer make excuses. The thing about self-responsibility, and I know I've talked a lot about this on this podcast because it is something that I think we could use more of on this planet. And I don't mean self-responsibility in this sort of harsh, oppressive way or this shameful way. I mean it in the most pure form, which is empowering. I see self-responsibility as the acknowledgement of our higher authority, our higher self, our adult self that is always present with us. The acknowledgement that we have access to this higher truth and that we can always choose that part. It's okay if we don't every single time. It's okay to feel the inner child. It's okay to be in the inner child. But to know that there's always an inner parent, an inner higher self, an inner adult that can create safety, that can create truth, that can create clarity. That is the self-responsibility. The knowing that we are made up of many parts, that we can make mistakes, that we can act from a wounded place, that we can unconsciously project a reality that we no longer desire. And taking responsibility for that, taking ownership over our thoughts and our patterns is the liberation point. It's the creation point. It's the point of self-actualization. The I am point, where we declare the life that we desire, where we declare a lived experience that is reflective of our higher adult self rather than the past. And Saturn delivers this medicine through showing where we hold these karmic contracts, these patterns, these beliefs that we're not capable of creating the reality we desire, where we convince ourselves that we're stuck, that we're victims. And this isn't just a shift that happens overnight. It's a practice and it's a development of presence, awareness, and safety within our bodies that allows us to gently and lovingly separate from the wound as we heal and integrate it. That's why we have our Saturn return at 27 to 30, because that's the point where we declare what our lives will look like. That's the point when we move out of our inner child and our past and the conditioning that created the reality that we lived in through our mid-20s, and we create a new reality, new pathways. At the Saturn return point, we all of a sudden have to confront the ways in which we participate in a reality, in the parts of our reality that we do and don't like, where we aren't showing up for life. And this responsibility isn't a punishment. It's a pathway, a gateway, and a channel to healing. Responsibility is a portal for growth, where we acknowledge our participation in our own difficulty and suffering. I have seen this time and time again with clients. We're working through the deep layers of patterning, sitting with and being with the pain points, giving the acknowledgement, the love, and the compassion that they need. And it's on the other side where they land in this point of empowerment, where they can fully and clearly see how they are participating in what's not working within their lives. And this is my favorite point because they fully click into their power at that point. I can see the physical transformation. I can see the sense of safety that comes with clarity and self-actualization and self-responsibility, because it is true empowerment. So as Saturn holds things together, its structure, boundaries, containment, it is the strong, straight spine that holds the open heart, that cradles and contains all the emotions that we experience and feel in this lifetime. And it's Saturn that creates enough safety in the system to hold those emotions, to remain open, to experience life in a way that is contained, because we need that force to hold us together. Otherwise, we will self-implode from all of the feelings, all of the pain, the suffering, the joy, the excitement. Saturn holds us. And in a somatic way, Saturn is connected to our sense of internal boundaries, how we hold our energy, how we say no, how we develop resilience. It's discipline, containment, stillness, and the ability to endure, to ground, to be with difficulty. Saturn is really our capacity. And we know capacity is built through experience and through presence. Saturn teaches us how to stay with ourselves, especially when life asks us to grow, to slow down, or to move through discomfort. It can teach us grace. And this is where we get to the peace with Saturn moving into Aries. Saturn in Pisces was showing us where we are boundaryless, where we need boundaries, where we are living in illusion, where we're delusional, where we're leading with rose-colored glasses and not tending enough to the structure, the boundaries, the containment, the reality of life, where we are defaulting to fawning or collapse, where we're waiting for life to happen to us. Saturn in Aries is the exact opposite. Aries is action-oriented. It's mobilized. It is the emergence of self. It's self-actualization. It's the soul's instinct to become. And Saturn is actually in its fall in Aries, which means that there's contradiction. Saturn in Aries is paradoxical, and that contradiction is the medicine. Aries wants to initiate. Saturn wants to slow down, to do it right. Aries acts on instinct. Saturn delays for mastery. Aries is the fire starter. Saturn is the gatekeeper. So this transit is inherently contradictory. Aries is a cardinal fire sign. It wants to move. Saturn wants to contain. And this push and pull, this difficulty, this conflict is where the potency lies. It asks for us to look at where we are impulsive, where we're letting our fire run the show. Can you move forward with intention instead of impulse? Can you channel your fire, your life force in a way that is sustaining and life-giving rather than destructive? Can you hold this push and pull, this conflict, this tension between raw instinct and impulse and earned wisdom, maturation? Can you let the fire forge you? Can you pause in the fire rather than act from it? We can see with these questions what's happening collectively, especially with Neptune and Aries as well. But this transit is truly about self-mastery. Aries is a sign of self. So this is about you. This is about initiating a new path of sovereignty, self-realization, actualization, but with endurance and maturity and self-control rather than recklessness. We're going to be looking at and healing any distortions around self-reliance, self-responsibility, where you may be overdue or isolate or overfunction, or where you can't access your power, or you're afraid to access your power. This will be calling us into right relationship with our inner power, our fire. Not to suppress it, but to really master it, to integrate it, to befriend our anger, our rage, and to learn how to channel it through creation rather than self-destruction or external destruction. This is about building and shaping and supporting the spine to act in alignment with your truth so that you can have the strong, straight spine to support your higher heart. Like I said, we need boundaries, we need security, we need safety so that our heart can act from a space of truth and integrity so that we can respond from that place rather than the wound. I've been working with clients on anger recently. This has been, I kind of see themes sort of weave into my work, and right now I'm noticing that anger is such a big one. This is going to be a time of reclaiming anger, instinct, raw life force, to not suppress it, which I see happen with so many women, but to befriend it, to learn how to dance with it, work with it, because the entire zodiac is built upon it. It begins with raw, primal life force, fire, initiation. And we have to remember that fire is a huge part of initiation. It's the creation point. And even the medicine of fire has been one that I've been sitting with so much this year, having moved through the fires that ripped through Los Angeles early this year, and what it would look like to actually befriend fire, to befriend rage, to befriend anger, what freedom could come from that. And this transit will also teach us about leadership, what true, authentic, mature, and ripened leadership actually looks like. And I can tell you that it involves the integration of life force, power, anger, rage, so that we aren't run by it, but we allow it to fuel us in a way that is life-giving and supportive. This is moving from the watery depths of Pisces into the fiery forge of Aries. This is less about dissolving and more about doing. Saturn in Aries will ask us to really clarify our identity, to refine our impulses, and to take brave, disciplined action that's aligned with who we truly are, not who we have been conditioned to be, not from our wounds and our past, but our higher alignment and our higher self. And I think this Saturn transit really is going to shape and form the next few years for us collectively and individually. We've been doing such deep work, and now we're getting some heat to really carve new ways. But Saturn is keeping us in check. If we just had this uncontained Aries energy, it would be a disaster. Saturn is giving us a map to truly embody the conscious warrior. So wherever this lands in your chart, is where you're going to be pushed to evolve, grow, and mature, to ripen through this activation, to be forged by the fire rather than collapsed or activated. This is a controlled burn. This is proactively looking at where you need to liberate yourself and where you need to contain yourself. Saturn and Aries will teach us this balance. So I ask you, what is your relationship with your fire? What is your relationship with your life force? Anger and rage is really just pure life force. It's our relationship with it that determines whether it's stored as stagnation and disease and suppressed grief, or if it gets channeled to creation. We're either creating or destroying with our life force. And destruction isn't bad. I mean, we need to destroy to create new and this cycle, but are you destroying from the ego or from the wound, or are you destroying from a higher alignment? Are you creating from a wound? Are you creating from your higher alignment, your higher heart? This is the discernment that Saturn can teach us in this transit. And for my Saturn return, lovelies, if you have your natal Saturn in Aries, you're entering your Saturn return, a time of great initiation. And we have a Saturn return between 27 and 30, and then again in our late 50s, 56 to 60, and then again in our late 80s, 84 to 90. So we think about these points, and they're all about rites of passage, that we have to go through these underworld journeys to reclaim our true self, to meet challenge and grit with truth, life force, power. These points teach us that maturation is a marathon. It's always happening. We are always ripening. We are always ripening and then dying and then being reborn. And this process never ends. It's a spiral. I think one of the easiest ways we can show up and meet Saturn, rather than let it sort of have its way with us and create this feeling of oppression, is that we can meet it. So meeting ourselves through devotion, ritual, structure, routine, integrating the inner masculine, embracing the structure and the containment, the presence, the holding. So if you are entering your Saturn return, even if you aren't, and you're just feeling this call to work with Saturn, I have a inner masculine guided journey that I can provide. I'll link in the show notes. And it's a beautiful time to just sit with your relationship with the masculine, your relationship with discipline, structure, rules, boundaries, your relationship with your anger, your life force, your power. Are you someone who is ruled by it? Do you feel reckless? Do you feel out of control? Or are you afraid to embrace it? Does it need more containment, or does it need freedom and liberation? So I opened my Untamed Elemental deck, and it opened to the Cloud card. And I kind of looked at it and I was like, ooh, this feels magnetic. I was pulled and drawn to it, but I always like to reset the deck. So I shuffled and was just sitting with the intention around this episode for the Soul Archaeology community. And of course, we came back to the Cloud card. So that is our medicine for today. And interestingly enough, it's all about ritual. It says, cloud arises when liquid droplets transform into crystals suspended in time. He is a kindred of many worlds. His vapor sings with celestial mobility, networking our moods with higher thought. He clarifies the scope of life's unpredictability with foils of wisps, chains of ripples, and scrolls of futures. He is broadcasting Earth's emotional intelligence to the cosmos and precipitating galactic wisdom upon the planet. He is a two-way mirror with the power of influence worlds. Cloud invites you to create magic through ritual. You can quickly usher in the change you desire by designing daily or monthly ceremonies that invoke the visions you hold for life. Cloud reminds you that the world of the spirit and the physical realm are reflections of one another. By crafting meaningful ritual, you join both together to bring your visions alive. Your intentions gather like water droplets, and you are empowered to shower life-giving rain upon beautiful new realities. When it's balanced, you feel conscious creation. When it's imbalanced, perceptions of fixed realities that limit potential. To bring into balance, perform a simple ritual invoking the full participation of your sovereign essential self. So that could not be more spot on and aligned. I just love when spirit speaks so clearly. I wanted to share two things with you before we depart. One is that my very special friends at Pound Jewelry have a new line of Herkimer diamonds, and they are quite literally called the Life Force necklace. And it's on a new chain, which they describe as a tethering in the ways that keep us rooted and embodied while able to open the door to expansion. And I got my first Herkimer necklace from Pound Jewelry when I first moved to LA. I first moved onto my Mercury line. It activated my throat in a way I was totally not expecting. It was my ally in healing my throat and using my voice, activating my voice. And it's an incredibly powerful talisman. It's also just so beautiful. So it's my favorite piece that Pound makes, although their products are so incredible and beautiful and are just made with such intention and care and knowledge and wisdom and integrity. So you can find a link for Pound Jewelry, my discount code linked in the show notes. And I'm also sharing something that I've been utilizing over the past few months and love so much. And it's called Kamana, and it's actually a coffee alternative. And it is ground mesquite. I've quite literally tried every single coffee alternative. I've been off of coffee since 2022. I've gone back in and tried to rework my relationship with it. And I just always get a no from my body. I love it so much, but I like to just smell it and enjoy it that way now. So I am living the non-stimulant, non-coffee life, and I miss the rich, roasted taste of coffee. And Kamana gives me that feeling of drinking coffee, but even better. I think it actually might even taste better. And I don't get any of the jitters, any of the side effects that I get with coffee. I get like a little boost of energy, but it's not coming from caffeine. It's just coming from the nutrients. It's also acid-free, which is really helpful for my whole microbiome and digestion. My body just really enjoys not having that acid first thing in the morning. So I'm also linking the link for Kamana and my discount code for that as well as the code for the Loom Box, which I use every single day. It's my red light go-to. And I am always on the non-inflammatory life journey because I just feel so much better when I'm tending to my inflammatory response. By the way, anger work really helps with that too. But you can access the discount code for the Loom Box, which is the red light box that I use and I adore and find so helpful. And thank you, as always, for being here, for your presence, for your participation, for your beauty, your love. I just adore every single one of you. I hope that this was helpful. Take what resonates, release what does not. Thank you for being here and have a beautiful week.